Hey guys, second question of the Q&A for the month is about strength gain versus maintenance while cutting. So the actual text of the question is, how important is gaining strength on a cut week by week versus a lifter who just maintains his lift throughout the cut? Would the outcome be the same? This question, I'm going to pick on you a little bit, is slightly lazy in the way it's being asked. First off, we don't know what the lifter's goal is to ask this question. I mean, is this a power lifter or is this a bodybuilder? Is this someone who cares if they're maintaining strength, or what's the goal here? How long is the cut? It's not specific enough for me to give a very, very good answer, but I can talk theory. And then the last part, would the outcome be the same? You kind of answered your own question. One person would maintain their strength, and one person would gain strength. So that's one outcome that would be different. I'm guessing, and I don't like to guess because I'm often wrong, that what you're actually asking is how important is gaining or versus maintaining strength on the cut as far as how it affects your lean body mass. If that is actually what you're asking, I will attempt to answer that. But the first part that we need to focus on is, what is your goal? If you are a power lifter, the entire diet should be based around performance. Okay, as your number one. And then number two would be weight class. Okay. However, if you are a bodybuilder, your diet should still be based around performance, but performance for a bodybuilder means visual appearance. Okay. As a number one. And then number two, strength. Okay. And performance. Because you're not just doing like one RMs, right? Okay. So, if your goal is to just cut down and drop some excess body fat, and you're primarily focused on strength in the gym, then you want to take that cut slowly, not too incredibly aggressively, and do what you can to try to mitigate strength losses on a cut. If your goal is to get maximally shredded, you're going to have to accept that there's going to be some strength losses at some point during the cut, and they do come back. Okay. So as far as what would be the difference, well, one thing I can tell you is that form follows function. What I mean by that is that to get hypertrophy, you have to lift weights. Hypertrophy is not directly caused by strength gains. However, progressive tension overload does create gains in muscle mass. Okay? So what that means is if you're exposing your muscle tissue to ever-increasing, progressively greater levels of tension, which on the planet Earth, when we're dealing with gravity, means typically load, they should be growing. Okay? Now, if you are not growing in strength, that means you're probably not going to be growing in muscle unless you have somehow increased your volume or created some other kind of way of getting to progressive tension increase. So that could be you're doing the same weights with more reps or more volume or more frequently. So there's a lot of ways to get around this. But in the end, the point is that if your performance, when all variables are equal, if load is going up, we should be seeing an increase in lean body mass. Okay? So does that mean that you can actually gain muscle on a cut? Yes, it does. But the amount is going to be so small when you're an advanced lifter that it's almost not worth talking about. And you may be gaining it at some point in the cut and then losing it later, and it really comes down to the net change. Okay? So really the answer to this question is the better you can do with maintaining performance in the gym, the better you will do with your muscle mass. Okay? So I'm going to change this conversation a little bit into what is the best way to go about this if my goal is maximal strength maintenance and maximal lean body mass maintenance. They're going to be very similar. So for a power lifter, what I like to do is really make sure that the diet is organized to support training. Okay? Not necessarily maximal fat loss. So sometimes I will give a power lifter a higher carb intake than I think is ideal for maximal fat loss. If I know that in the final week where we maybe manipulate carb, fat, sodium, and water to make him make weight if he has a 24-hour weigh-in or a 2-hour weigh-in, because it doesn't matter what he looks like. And we can get less actual fat loss early, then I will take a slower rate of weight loss in respect of trying to keep more strength. However, for a bodybuilder, where you pretty much have to get fat-free subcutaneously to look your best on stage, and we have a time limit, I'm going to be pushing the fat loss priority over everything else, so long as I know they're not completely losing their muscle mass. So if you watch the other video that's coming out this month, I talked about rates of weight loss. So I mean, the first thing I'll look at with a bodybuilder is pictures, and the second thing will be, are they meeting the rate of weight loss that I want to see on average per week? So if they're losing somewhere in that 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week, and depending on how much time they have left, it might be 1%, it might be 0.5%, depending on what phase of their diet they're in, then I'm happy. And if their strength is taking a slight dip, so be it. Okay? On the other hand, if a power lifter is losing 1% of body weight per week, is looking leaner, but his strength is going down, I will pretty much immediately chop that deficit down and take a 0.5% body weight loss to try to maintain performance. So it's really just what master are you paying heed to first, right? A powerlifter, it's going to have to be strength, you know. So you're going to be wanting to focus on manipulating your diet so that you get the bare minimum amount of weight loss and fat loss that you need to make the weight class with whatever you're going to do in the final week or the final days to make weight, whether that's water cutting or what have you. And that's a topic for another video on how to do that safely and without affecting your performance and health. And then for a bodybuilder, it's going to be, I need enough performance to maintain my muscle mass, but ideally I need to get fat-free when it comes to time for me to get on stage. So again, different masters, different focuses, very similar approach. It's just going to be a matter of priorities. So if you're a power lifter, slowest you can lose while still getting to your weight class without losing performance. If you're a bodybuilder, the fastest you can lose body fat without sacrificing all those other things. And by fastest, I mean still within a reasonable range. You don't want to just try to lose 5 pounds of fat per week. You won't look like a bodybuilder by the time you get on stage. If you lose too fast, it won't all be fat. So you're going to have to accept some strength losses here. Here, you want to only accept what's absolutely necessary to make your weight class. Okay? And that typically is, like if you're dropping from the 220s to the 198s, there really shouldn't be much strength loss, to be honest. If you're dropping from, say, the 198s to the 165s, there's probably going to be some. Okay? And maybe just some minor losses and leverages on bench press or something like that if you're dropping one weight class. But if you're dropping 10, 15 pounds and you're in one of the light, heavier, heavyweight classes for powerlifting, if you're losing a measurable amount of strength, more than, say, 5 pounds on bench or something like that, or your deadlift and squat are going down, you're probably not dieting properly, in my opinion. All right? So hopefully that answered the question. But essentially the difference is going to be form follows function. So if performance goes down, the adaptations that come from that performance are probably also going to go down. So if your hypertrophy or strength training are degrading, your hypertrophy and strength will probably degrade. If you can maintain it, though, it probably shouldn't go too far backslide. And the more strength you can maintain during your cut, that means the better position you will be in to start your off-season with kind of a boost or being a step ahead of the game. Like, for example, I do a pretty good job of maintaining my strength on at least my lower body lifts when I diet. And normally that's great because it sets me up to have a great powerlifting season the next season and being in the lower weight classes for a few competitions. Versus if I absolutely tank, then it might be 3 months before I'm even back to my normal lifts before the prior season. So you got to think long term, okay? So that's it. Good round of Q&A questions this month, or this week, excuse me, or this month. This month, right? Do a few a month, and we'll talk to you guys soon.